future, talk radio will actually educate, inspire, and make you think. The future is now. Topics and music that affect your life from Universal Broadcasting Network. Tune in at ubnradio.com.
Dr. Judy here, Dr. Judy, WTF, What the Freud, and today we're going to be really looking at What the Freud situation. Topic is borderline personality disorder, BPD, and love addiction. So we're going to dive right into that. A couple of things that I want to say. First of all, I'm really impressed with the audience. You guys are really learning how to think like a shrink, and I know that many of you have watched several episodes, and you seem to have a really great psychoeducation. And for those of you who are listening in for the first time, I'm going to boil it down to a simple process of looking at life, psychopathology, systems gone wrong, the pain of the human race through the lens of a mind map. I also want to say that we have a wonderful team at the Psychological Healing Center, so please check out the Meet the Team at my website, drjudywtf.com, and feel free to take advantage of 15-minute consultations with whoever you want, because we're really here to serve you, and to serve you at fees that fit your budget, because we have a wide range of people who work at various fee scales. So don't be shy, pick up the phone, request for consultation, and we'll give you that. So back to the mind map. A mind map is a lens through which I want to educate you to see situations, or as I like to call them, systems gone wrong. And today we're going to look at the love addiction system and how borderline personalities through their childhood injuries usually pair up with love avoidance and narcissists who continue to educate them and create a repetitive cycle, which I call the WTF, or the What the Freud. And this repetition principle is dated back to Freud's work and his definition of this repetition principle, which is really about psychological files that are not closed. So when something's still open and not finished psychological business, it tends to repeat itself. So we're going to go into how this horrible love addiction cycle continues to repeat itself. And everybody, this is a call-in show, so please feel free to call in 323-843-2826, and I can answer your questions. And please be aware that I'm going to keep the conversations relatively short because I really want to stay on topic. And if you're calling about another topic, then take advantage of the free consultation rather than go off topic. Okay, I really appreciate that. So the mind map. The mind map is a system of healing that is designed to identify childhood wounds. And tell me when that mind map is up. Thank you very much. And if you look at the top third of the mind map, you will see wounds, reactions, and encoding. And this is the encoding version of the first few years of life, because as babies, we're absorbing everything. We're absorbing the good, we're absorbing the bad, and we are connecting, and we are also experiencing disconnect, which is what we're healing. We're healing human disconnect. That is the primary reason that this mind map is put together. So I want to talk about the 5 wounds of childhood, and then related to BPD, borderline personality disorder, love addiction. There are 5 wounds that pertain to physical, sexual, and emotional abuse, neglect, and smothering. So those are the big 5. If you could think of any others, then please feel free to say so. Do we have a call in? Okay, I am interruptible. So, yes, who is on the couch? Hi.
Hi, Dr. Judy. My name is Pat. I had spoken to you before,
Hi,
just for a
Pat.
little bit.
Okay.
And yes, hi, from New Jersey. And I was just calling in just to talk about borderline personality as well as anything else, I guess.
Okay. And I am going to give a rundown of what borderline personality entails, but tell me what you had in mind. Why does this subject speak to you?
Okay. So basically, I've found you for a few months. I've listened to pretty much most of the episodes.
Okay.
And just growing up with two parents that were there, both, in my opinion, narcissistic and borderline.
Who was which? Was mom? What was mom? What was dad? According to your
Dad was
knowledge.
a very busy gambler,
Okay.
alcoholic, very unpredictable. We were happy when he made it home. We hid keys. It was a very chaotic house. But yet it was supposed to be normal, I guess. And my mom was just always, it was either her pressure or her blood sugar, or we were always scared that, she would just explode.
Okay.
Although I am the youngest and there were quite a difference of years before me, I do know they tried to love me. It's very confusing to me, all of this,
And
because
no,
go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, I wanted to say that's why it's so subtle, is because it's confusing. It's not like being hit or something as obvious as that. It's the nuances, and then as I like to say, we're not crazy, we're made crazy. So how did that leave you with all of this emotionally unavailable father and a mother who had health issues and she was always in pain? What effect did it have on you?
So for most of my life, I've always been on a quest to figure out what's wrong with me.
And
Whether
what are you
it's,
seeing?
I went through every 12-step imaginable.
Okay.
I went through every type of therapy, mindfulness, most recent, from psychiatry to medication. There's nothing that I haven't tried that. It's almost like I'm annoying to be around, because it's kind of like all I talk about, because I just want to get to the bottom of it. Like, why am I still going over this my whole life?
Okay,
of this uneasy feeling, basically.
Okay, let me define BPD, borderline personality disorder, and then you can look and see whether that applies to you, if it applies to your family, and then relate it to love addiction, because it's a very painful system gone wrong. And so let me just get into what this looks like. And I have here an article that I'm looking at, and it comes from Behavioral Health, and it's described as an instability of affect, which means that there's an instability in mood and interpersonal relationships, impulse control, and self-image. Approximately 15 to 20% of clinical patients have BPD. So, what does it mean? Where does it stem from? And this is where the mind map comes in. Childhood trauma. I didn't know how high this was, but did you know that 75% of children were sexually abused who are now diagnosed with BPD? So this is childhood trauma, verbal abuse, physical abuse, sexual abuse. So when you go through this level of abuse, of course you're going to be emotionally dysregulated. Of course you're going to be pining for love. So did any of that happen to you? Does that apply to you?
No, that's
No.
physical, or if anything, it was just, I guess, being left alone a lot.
Okay.
And just even having three older siblings, we were all supposed to be this tight group. I always felt I spent most of the time by myself anyway.
Okay, and see, okay, let me ask you a couple of questions, and then I'll go right into these definitions, because people want to know what's the cause of this, and I'm all about the causes, So we're looking at the blueprint, your mother, your father. So let's just speak to your what you told me about your father. He was emotionally unavailable. He obviously had symptoms of what I call the hole in the soul, because he was gambling, he was drinking, which made him unavailable. And then your mother was breaking down, because one of the things that I talk about a lot is that the nurturer, which is usually mom, the nurturer of the family, has to be nurtured by the father figure, the secondary caregiver. And if he's not around, it creates a real meltdown in family dynamics. And so she was neglected. She was emotionally neglected. So do you see that she didn't have a lot to give to you, and he didn't have a lot to give to you? And then multi-generationally, I think this is a pattern that probably trickled down now to you. So not sure. Again, these labels, they're very interesting to me, because I look at things as systems gone wrong. And these labels are a way of kind of pattern recognizing. I think that's the most useful way to see these labels: narcissistic personality, borderline personality. But in essence, it is traumas of childhood, different types of trauma. And I'll be happy to put you in touch with any team member that fits you to break it down and mind map what's going on with you. But in general, I want you to see that emotional dysregulation is caused by lack of secure attachment, which I'm sure you did not have. Okay? So I'm gonna go on with defining these things and mind mapping this love addiction phenomenon that so many people are caught in, and then please take advantage of the free consultation and call back. Okay. Okay. So
thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you very much for calling in. And so it is amazing that 75% of all people diagnosed with this emotional dysregulation, which oftentimes will lead to severe acting out, depression, anxiety, and sometimes cutting oneself, and suicidality, and emotional dysregulation to the point where they will overvalue people and devalue people. So I want to just go a little bit further into this BPD and then love addiction, and see how they're interconnected. So in essence, what we're looking at is a person who has been traumatized, and they have a desire for intimacy with a fear of trust, with a fear that they're going to be abandoned. So unfortunately, what the Freud part of it is that they will then pair with a partner who will fulfill on this nightmare. So they'll choose somebody who is avoidantly attached, somebody who is narcissistically defended, meaning that they're not capable of empathy, they're not capable of love, they're not capable of really interconnecting. And back to the mind map, let's mind map it and see what happens. So what we have here is, do we have another call in? Okay, so what happens here is that these wounds of childhood for the person suffering from abandonment issues and emotional dysregulation, combined with a person who is very defended, lacks empathy, avoids love, does not know how to interconnect with people, and then that person's wounds plus the partner's wounds combine, and they together make a very, very bad concoction here, and their reactions trigger into panel 2, the reactions to wounds, and then they activate each other's negative core beliefs. Core beliefs like I'm not lovable, or core beliefs on the other end of the spectrum, which is more the narcissistic end of the spectrum, which is I don't even believe that love exists, or a core belief that if I love, I'm going to be smothered, which we'll get much more into. And then the bad ride, the WTF ride, chaos, defenses, and breakdowns. And the chaos always has to do with this push-pull, because the borderline PD, the person who has abandonment issues, is desperately trying to put salve on the wound by drawing the person closer, and the avoidant one and the defended one wants to push away, and then what they end up having are kind of opposite defense mechanisms, and then they start breaking down into chaos, defenses, and finally the big breakdowns, which can look really, really awful, and sometimes they can look like domestic violence and suicidality and so on, and then the cycle will probably repeat. It's a very self-fulfilling prophecy, unfortunately. So I want to also describe the other end of the spectrum, which is the NPD. Okay, so what is the Narcissistic Personality Disorder part? So remember, hand in glove, peg and groove, these people usually gravitate toward each other in a repetition principle kind of way, because remember, both of them are injured in different ways, and they attract each other in order to complete the psychological past. And they don't complete the psychological past because two injured people are not wise enough and therapized enough to heal. So if you find that you're in a pattern like this, and you're with a partner who is the partner in crime, so to speak, to this what the Freud, don't break up with the person, get help. Drop the problem, as I like to say. Don't drop the person, and see if you too can go on a healing journey to heal your childhood wounds so that you can reboot the system, have an opportunity to have a relationship that's fundamentally much more sustainable and stable, and be each other's emotional regulators, and create a healthy attachment. So here's the other end of the spectrum. This is the NPD part, okay? So usually 5 criteria are needing to be met in order to qualify with the NPD, but I pretty much look at symptoms such as a grandiose sense of self-importance, exaggerated accomplishments and demands to be considered superior. He or she lives in a dream world of exceptional success and power, beauty, genius, perfect love. He or she thinks of him or herself as very special and privileged, and can be only understood by very special, high-status people. There's a demand for excess amounts of praise and admiration. They feel entitled. This is a very key thing. So they don't like to earn things. They just want to be given to because they're special. And then they're exploitative of other people because of their entitlement. They think that people are there to meet their narcissistic supplies. So they tend to vampire other people, unfortunately, and those needing that love are going to be the victims of this, because they're so needy that they'll do anything to be loved, and then they're wonderful food for the narcissist to take from. And here's a key one: lack of empathy. So when you've been injured on a causal level, meaning that in the case of narcissism, when you have been injured to the point where you have a mother who has overvalued you and has smothered you and made you think that you're very, very special and that you don't have to earn anything, then you go into the world feeling this entitlement, and then after a while you start using people not as people to interconnect with, which is kind of the model in the mind map of panel number 7, which is synergistic and interconnected, and I call it the place where two people really meet each other and enhance each other. People with narcissistic injuries don't know how to do this. And so the person who has abandonment issues is really up against this hard kind of wall. And so there's this lack of empathy, which is very, very challenging for the person who has these abandonment issues. And they're trying to basically take blood from the stone is what's happening, and it's not working, and it never works. And then the more frantic they get, the more the partner draws back, and then this becomes this horrible dance of dysfunction. So this is the mind mapping. You can begin to see that panel 1, the borderlines, abandonment issues, plus the narcissist's hardened shell of lack of empathy and inability to really interconnect, create a very bad reaction. Then they trigger each other and they take each other on a very, very bad ride. And it is self-fulfilling, and it's a mess. And it could be very, very dramatic. So let's look a little bit further into the causes. And I drew up some material here by, like to give credit to people. This is an article that I found. I'll try to source it for you guys. I'll find the author. But anyway, causes of narcissism. One theory regarding narcissistic personality disorder is based on arrested psychological development. So this dates back to a defense against psychological pain. And then there's another theory that, so one theory says that it's arrested development, and that would be defined by Heinz Kohut, who is a very prominent psychoanalyst. And then the other theory says, no, it's not arrested development only, it's because of the defense against childhood pain, and that would be Otto Kernberg. Dating back to Sigmund Freud on narcissism, Freud says that the reason for this narcissism is because the kid has too much power. So remember the good old Oedipus complex, the story of the little boy who falls in love with his mother, and the little boy is supposed to then compete with dad. And in order for this Oedipus complex to resolve, okay, and I am interruptible, so if this is complicated, please call and clarify. But basically, you've got mom, dad, and kid. And kid starts getting power and starts to feel that mommy's all mine, mommy's all mine. And if that child is not put in his place by dad in a way that says, hey, I'm sorry, she's taken, now go find your own, at some particular point, if this is not resolved, if mom becomes too enmeshed, let's say, with the child, then the child gets a sense of power. And as a matter of fact, this child becomes confused in terms of his or her role in the family, in this case the boy, but it could be the opposite with the Electra complex, which is where the little girl falls in love with the daddy, and the opposite happens. So in order for a system to function properly, you have to have the pillars, the female and the male, or if it's a case of gay couples, it has to be the primary and secondary caregivers have to be on the same page and offer the structure of nurturing not only the child, but nurturing each other so that the system can work. And the child cannot have too much power here, because if they do, then the whole system is going to break down. So the resolution to this is that the child gets put back in his or her place, and then this entire system gone wrong gets resolved, and then the child is feeling safe because the parents are controlling the situation. So when a child gets too much power, can you see how that can pump them up and make them feel overimportant and make them feel like like they're in control of the family dynamics, which they're not supposed to be. So I want to veer off for one moment and define my way of looking at narcissism as a system gone wrong through the lens of the mother and the father are supposed to trickle down their love to the child. In the case of the narcissistically injured system, it's the child that feeds the parent. So it's the opposite. So instead of mother and father giving the unconditional love and emotional nourishment to the child, it's the child that's being used in service of the parent. And so let's go back to this love addiction system, which is, I want to read you a little bit about how to recognize love addiction. Okay, there's a very interesting here, some ways to really have some indicators, and this is from Love Addiction Aholics information. So typical signs of love addiction. Okay, number 1, mistaking intense sexual experience and new romantic excitement for love. That's one. Second, craving and constantly craving relationships. That's another. Another is when in a relationship, being desperate to please and fearful of the other's unhappiness. And I did a couple of videos on people pleasers, and you might want to watch those episodes because they clarify this dynamics of people pleasing. Again, the borderline is so desperate for love that they will do anything to please the other, and so the relationship becomes this feeding cycle for the one that is narcissistically injured. So here's another one. When not in a relationship, people with BPD suffer from feeling desperate and alone. That hole in the soul, that loneliness is very profound. And it's very profound because the attachment between mother and baby was such a disconnect from a young age that they never feel a very strong core sense of self. So this core sense of self is missing. And then to go on, inability to maintain intimate relationships once the newness and excitement has worn off. So they don't know how to have day-to-day stability. Why? Because their families were not stable. So as I like to say in my book, Be the Cause, Healing Human Disconnect, which I know many of you have, and you can definitely order it at Amazon or off of my website, parents at the bar. So if the family system is chaotic, if the family system is detached, abusive, unprotective, unloving, then people will gravitate towards same in their next relationship, which is their love relationship. And here's another example of a sign of love addiction: finding it unbearable or emotionally difficult to be alone. And that speaks to that emptiness, that lack of ability to feel an inner sense of identity. So there's no identity with this particular individual. In the case of NPD, the person has an identity, but it's a false sense of self. It's this grandiose sense of self where they overvalue themselves and they have to keep up an image, and the partner has to help them keep up an image. And if the image is not kept up, then usually that partner is fired. So it's again a horrible dynamic. So here's another one. When not in a relationship, they may use compulsive sex and fantasy to fill the loneliness. Okay, so do you now have a better sense of why these two disorders get together? It is a self-fulfilling prophecy. It always breaks down in chaos. The defenses are different. The core sense of self, in one case, is at the core, there's a sense of abandonment. And in the other case, with the NPD, at the core, there's a false sense of self. And they're defending this false self of grandiosity so that nobody discovers that underneath it all, there's this extreme sense of insecurity. So where's the true self in all of this? There isn't. So how do people relate in an authentic way to each other? Well, they don't, and that's why it's so messy and chaotic. One of the things that I like to refer to is the sense of the big I versus the little I. And let me get into this concept. The big I is our self-actualized sense of who we are. And how do we develop a sense of a big I? We develop it through attachment to our primary caregiver. When we're mirrored, when we're attuned to, when we're breastfed, when we have parents that nurture us, then we are able to develop a sense of self. When we have to keep constantly feeding the parent, we don't develop a self-actualized whole and complete self, because we're trained, we're busy feeding the parent who is also compromised. And so this feeding system of the parent leaves the child depleted of really feeding themselves. And so that's why when they get with a narcissistically defended person, when they get with a borderline personality disorder, they'll replicate this sense of need. So in other words, they're picking the needy parent, okay? And they're doing a what the Freud by picking a needy parent, and they hate it. They want to complete the files, but they don't like it. And so they'll start drawing back. And the more they draw back, the more the person suffering from abandonment and loss of identity starts freaking out. And then the whole thing starts breaking down. So it is very, very self-fulfilling. And this is a call-in show, so please feel free to call in, 323-843-2826. And so we're mind mapping today borderline personality disorder and how they usually gravitate to people who are love avoidance, and then they usually break down together into chaos defenses, and ultimately they cycle through over and over. And the only way to really get out of this mess is to, as I like to say, go back to the cause. Because remember, you are not the cause of part one of your life. The blueprint that you came from is that childhood hostage situation. You can't help who your parents are. And so when you're acting out unconsciously, and I mean unconsciously meaning you don't know, there's that blind spot, you're just acting impulsively and unconsciously, then you will continue the replication process. You will continue this psychovirus, as I like to put it. And I think we have a call-in. So yes, hi. You are on the couch. Who is this, please?
Oh, okay. Hi, is this Dr. Judy?
It is. Who's this?
Okay, I've been listening to the show. I just didn't think I would get through. This is Paris.
Hi,
St.
Paris.
John. Hi.
Nice to meet
and
you.
I actually talked to you recently, as of, I don't know, the last month or so.
Okay.
Looking for some kind of treatment, and I told you that I was kind of like newly discovering traits of having borderline personality disorder in myself.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
I'm
that's
sure you. I'm sure you talk to many different people. So
I'm sure it'll come back to me, and I do apologize because sometimes I do talk to so many people that I don't remember the exact conversation. But please remind me,
of course,
and tell me what is it that makes you think that you suffer from these issues of abandonment, issues of lack of this solidity of the inner core self. So talk a little bit about that.
Well, I grew up knowing that I just didn't feel right. And so my earliest diagnosis, like around my late teen years, was depression and anxiety.
Okay.
And so going into my young adulthood, now I'm 25. But, I had discovered that, okay, so I am dealing with depression, I'm dealing with anxiety, and that all is very much still there.
Okay.
But it's like trying to move forward from the depression and anxiety, it was just so difficult. I knew that there was something deeper, something that was holding me back even more. And so when I found out about borderline through this documentary called 32 Pills, it's basically about a sister trying to figure out why her sister committed suicide, and she thinks that she had borderline personality disorder.
Okay.
And so the common traits that I affiliated with that was deeper than just depression was never feeling like people loved me.
Yeah.
Always trying to hide myself.
Okay.
And feel free to interrupt me at any time.
No, go ahead. I want to
I'm calling
hear.
really to learn more.
Yeah. Okay, so go ahead. What other symptoms?
Yeah, let me just, I guess I can focus it in a little bit more, and then you can kind of take the controls from there.
Sure.
But yeah, the reason why I didn't think I had borderline personality is because I just grew up always feeling like this was myself. This was just me. This is who I am. This is not like an illness or a disorder. But I remember reading something saying that, borderline shows itself differently depending on that person. And so definitely always blaming my parents, my step parents, for not loving me enough, my sister, my siblings, and going in and out of all these different relationships.
Okay.
Very dysfunctional. But I have more recently found out that there's kind of like a distinction with borderline personality. Not only does it show itself differently and with different people, but that there's two different common types. And I don't know if this is researched or not, but there's a quiet borderline personality where I don't really relate to exploding, emotional
acting out. And you don't relate to that. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I have definitely throughout my life. I mean, who hasn't, regardless if you have a disorder or not.
Right.
But the quiet type, I think, resonates more with me, where I hold everything in. It's like I cannot express myself. It's gotten to a point where I can barely have conversations.
Okay.
I was so scared to call in because, of course, the voice in my head that I've had since I was a kid,
which is
I'm not good enough.
Okay.
People don't love me.
Okay, so let me mind map a little bit of what you're saying. Okay.
Sure.
So you're talking about panel 3, your core belief: people don't love you. Somehow you're not important enough to be loved. And where does this come from? It comes from the blueprint, your family of origin. Okay, and the depression and the anxiety. A lot of people say, oh, let's treat my depression. Let's treat my anxiety. Let's treat this symptom. Let's treat that symptom. I say, let's treat the cause. Because once we go to the cause and start looking at the hole in the soul, so to speak, and start looking at where the inception of the system gone wrong, then you can start to see that you're not diseased, you're diseased. You see the difference? You're not at ease. Why aren't you at ease?
Right.
Because you weren't made to feel at ease in your family of origin. And this is not a blame your parents model. It's more like a tracking of multi-generational wounds that have never healed and get passed on from generation to generation. So your depression, for you to understand it from a mind map perspective, is your implosion. Understand? So You're not important
Right.
enough to be heard. So nobody's going to hear you. So why should you bother
Right.
to explode? You're just going to implode. And this depression is your repression because you don't have the mirroring of being heard. And then the anxiety is your desire to speak and to self-express. But the anxiety, like calling me, right? Weren't you a little bit anxious to call me? But then again, not that many people love to public speak, and believe it or not, I had an extreme fear of public speaking, which I'll talk about another time. I had a very big breakthrough on that, and if I didn't have that breakthrough, I wouldn't be here. Okay, so that
That's great.
that anxiety. That anxiety is the desire to bring it to the surface, but then when you're not mirrored, you're not attuned to, what do? You push it back down, and it becomes your suppression and depression. And then when you think there's a little bit of a hope of a chance that you're going to be heard, then you bring it back up again, and then the anxiety is, will people care? Will people get me? Will people listen? Will I be attuned to? And then if they miss the mark, and that's another thing, I just want to make a big point of this. When people are not properly mirrored and attuned to, if you're a little bit off with them, okay, and tell me if this applies to you. If people don't exactly get you, it's very frustrating and very painful. It's like they have to be pretty spot on. And if they're not spot on, then it's experienced as a wound. And that's why people who live with people who have BPD are feeling like they're walking on eggshells, because it's never quite right. It's never good enough. You don't love me enough. No one loves me enough. Nobody can understand me. Well, where does this come from? It comes from not good enough parenting. Because when parenting is good enough and not perfect, who has perfect, then there is that inner core sense of self. And then there is a feeling that you're wanted and lovable and so on. And that the world looks different. I call it the world through the cracked lens of perception. And that's why we feel like we're cracking up, because we feel like we're seeing the world through the eyes of our family of origin, through the wounds of our childhood. And once the lens starts clearing up and you identify these lies, which are the core beliefs, the lies like, I'm not good enough, I'm not wanted. Is that your dog?
Yeah, I'm so sorry. Let me mute it.
That's
while I'm
okay.
listening
That's
to you.
okay. I have a new puppy, so I'm going crazy with her. I'm in love and going insane with my new dog, but it'll be worth it. So anyways, do you see that this is all predicated on parenting gone wrong? Healing human disconnect. What is that about? It's about clearing the poisons out of your system and reprocessing emotions so that they don't live within you and they don't stagnate and then turn into symptoms as severe as suicide in some cases, and the anxiety and the depression and the low self-esteem. And from the other side of the spectrum, the people who suffer from narcissistic personality disorder, they suffer at the end of the day if they don't have an ability to connect and empathize. Well, they can only fool so many people for so long, and if they're busted, then the person will leave them. Fortunately, and I mean that very, very, tongue-in-cheek, they don't feel so much. So because they don't identify with this feeling of empathy, they can just move on to the next object and the next object and the next object. And people who suffer from the low self-esteem and the abandonment issues then are part of that fodder, the feeding fodder, and then it reinforces you're not wanted, you're not worth it. Do you see how that works?
Yes, you perfectly described me.
Okay, and that's the WTF. Okay, so what do you do about it? you have to heal from the ground up. You've got to go back into these wounds, reprocess them. And as I say to the audience as well, we have a really amazing team. Take advantage of the free consultation with any one of the team members. I'm also coming out with my mind map video series, which is almost done. I'm just editing the last few bits of it, and that's up on my website. You can check it out, a mind map video series, and that's another way to do the mind map journey, because some people don't really like to talk to a therapist, and some people really want a psychoeducation where they could do it on their own time. So you have a lot of options, but what I want to leave you with is that everything that you're describing is fallout material from human disconnect. Got it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And once we heal the disconnect, then you can start building yourself from the inside out and have a core self where you start really parenting yourself better, because your parents, it sounds like they did not do an adequate job. Okay?
Yes, I'll look into that, and I look forward to healing that human disconnect. That sounds like a great answer. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Thanks for calling in. Where are you from, by the way, Paris?
Los Angeles.
Okay. All right. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully we'll meet one day, and really appreciate your comments. And
I'm sure we will.
Okay.
I appreciate your show.
Okay. Thanks a lot for that.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Good
Bye-bye.
night. Bye. Okay, I think we have a few more minutes here. We have 5 more minutes. Okay, if we don't have another caller, I'm going to go right into Shrink That Tune. Okay, so we've got here lyrics by Pink. Please Don't Leave Me. And my official song picker, Heather, who was on my show, she was on the show about homelessness, a very wonderful, creative human being who has been through homelessness and was willing to share her story. And thank you, Heather. You're such an amazing human being and a light to everyone, and courageous for sharing your journey. And now you're my official song picker because you're very musical, and you certainly do know music well, and I happen to love rock music, and so we have similar musical tastes. So here it is. Please Don't Leave Me by Pink. So I don't know if I can yell any louder. How many times have I kicked you out and said something insulting? I can be so mean when I want to be. I'm incapable of really anything. I can cut you into pieces when my heart is broken. Okay, so can you see the ups and downs, the frustration, the lack of impulse control, the yelling, and this the sense of the recognition that they could be very, very insulting. Why? Because their person is hurt. So the person could be so mean, but then they're really feeling that their heart is broken. So it's ironic, because the very persons that they want to be close to, they push away. Please don't leave me. So after they give people a bad ride, and the video's incredible, so watch the video about a woman who literally beats up her boyfriend or her significant other, but then she says and seduces him back into staying. Please don't leave me. Please don't leave me. I always say how I don't need you, but it's always going to come right back to this. Please don't leave me. So it's this tug of war. I love you, I hate you. I love you, I hate you. It's really crazy making. And so this is that cycle that I'm talking about, that WTF cycle. How did I become so obnoxious? Why is it with you that makes me act like this? Well, now you know why. Because the person is avoidant and triggering abandonment issues. And the more she's abandoned, the more she's going to be obnoxious and go up and down in her emotions like a yo-yo. I've never been this nasty. Can you tell me that this is Can't you tell that this is just a contest? Well, a contest to win him over, which she'll never win him over because he's probably avoidant. The one that wins will be the one that hits the hardest. Wow. But baby, I don't mean it. I promise. Please don't leave me. Please don't leave me. I always say I don't need you, but it's always going to come right back to please don't leave me. So there's this push and pull. I don't need you. Go away. No, don't go away. Come back. And then the person playing into all of this is the person who is avoidantly attached. And when the person who is the BPD abandoned one comes back, they feel smothered because that's their psychopathology. That's their wound. Smother mother, and I want to do a show on smothering. Somebody suggested that to me today. So you can see this is certainly a system gone wrong, and everybody loses here. And the only way to win this game and play a better game of life is to get conscious and to go back to the cause and to reboot the system and start healing these wounds of childhood so that you don't engage in this unconscious, dysfunctional dance of love addiction. So with that said, I want to wish everybody a great week, and please do call in. We're going to be back on air next week. I have team members that come on sporadically from the Psychological Healing Center, and please go to Meet the Team. And for those of you who don't have my book, it's called Be the Cause, Healing Human Disconnect. And also check out my mind map video series. It's up on my website. The website could be reached at drjudywtf.com. Thank you for tuning in, and I'm glad to know that people are thinking more and more like a shrink, and that's one of the objectives of the Psychological Healing Center, is to put you in a position where you can get conscious and analyze yourself and think like a shrink so that you eventually don't need therapy. Thank you very much for tuning in. See you next week.